Hey there everybody, it's Ashley. I am so thrilled to be here on the Pinkfresh YouTube channel for the first time. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I like to use these absolutely gorgeous scrapbook products from Pinkfresh and incorporate them into my card making. I am primarily a card maker, so anytime I can use these beautiful pieces and incorporate them into my everyday crafting is a win for me. So I'm going to primarily use the gold foiled acetate ephemera and this sentiment piece from the ephemera pack. Now, to add a little bit of interest to my card, I'm going to be using the very outer edge of the Pretty Frames 2 die. The great thing about this die is when you send it through your die cutting machine on a piece of cardstock, it cuts out all of these really gorgeous frames. So I can set aside these inner frames for another time and keep this outer frame just for the interest that I'm looking for in this particular card. And like I said, my sentiment is coming from the ephemera pack, and it is this piece that says, "Living our best life right now." I'm going to cut this down with one of the rounded edge labels from the basic label frames, and I think that this just makes it a little more cohesive with an A2 size card. This is a great size on its own for a scrapbook page, but when you're putting it on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of paper or cardstock for your project, it can easily overtake the design. So cutting this down with this die really helps. These dies are nested, which is great because now I can use the size up from the die that I've used to cut down for my sentiment and cut it from this rose gold or brassy piece of metallic cardstock, and this will make a great background or matted background for my sentiment. I'm using the gold foiled acetate ephemera as the design for my card, so if I can draw a little bit more attention to my sentiment, that's great. I'm going to use liquid glue to adhere this just to make sure that I can get it on the very center of this metallic piece of cardstock that I've cut out, and I'm going to place an acrylic block on top of it just to make sure that it dries flat. I'm going to place that in the center of my card panel now, and then take all of these gold foiled ephemera pieces and just arrange them just underneath my sentiment. I want to make sure that it's framing my sentiment, but I don't want it to take away or hang too much off of my card front. So I'm just making sure that I get all of them on there within the parameters of the card. I decided to use liquid glue to place this on in case I needed to move it a little bit, but after all was said and done, I think I would have used a tape runner. I think it would have been a lot easier because I did have quite a bit of movement. But to make sure that it dried flat and nothing moved again, I used an acrylic block just to put it right on top. I let that sit for a few minutes just to make sure that it was dried completely, and then I removed the acrylic block, and now it's time to add some foam tape to make sure that this has a little bit of dimension when I adhere it to my card front. The really great thing about these foiled acetate ephemera pieces is that they are completely transparent. So when I give it that little bit of dimension, you can really see the dimension even through the ephemera pieces. And that's great just for cohesion and interest into the card. Now the very edges of this 5 frames 2 outer die are cut. So it's not square or there's no points. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the pieces and the corners off so that it matches and it looks cohesive. I'm going to end up putting this on a purple base. So I've used some Seedless Preserves Distress Oxide and then some Blackjack Catherine Pooler ink just to blend on the very edges because it didn't really match enough. I wanted it to be a little darker, and this was a great and easy way to do that. I applied some repositionable adhesive there to the very back of my card front so that I could see how it would look with a rectangular base, and I decided after all that I did need the corners cut. Now this is not generally my style to do an interesting shaped card like this, but I love the way it looks with these chopped corners. So after all was said and done, I went ahead and added some foam tape to the very back of my card front and added it to this shaped card base, and I love the way that that one came out. For my next card, I am diving into the Just a Little Lovely paper pack, and these are 6x6 pattern paper pack. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the largest rectangle die from the Diagonal Stitched Rectangles die set. And I'm just going to cut it out of this pattern paper to make sure that I get mostly this grid. Now it's hard to see on camera, but there's this really nice fine lined purple grid on this pattern paper there to the right, and that's what I decided I wanted my card base to be. I'm going to use the Adore Alpha set for my main part of my sentiment. And I've decided I want it to say love you, but when I went ahead and lined up the dies on my card front, I realized that LOVE just wasn't going to fit well enough, so I ended up using LUV and then YOU to spell out love you. Now I used that floral pattern paper to cut out my letter dies, and then I used some purple shimmery and sparkly glitter paper to cut them out again so that I could have the glitter paper as the outline to the floral paper letter. I went ahead and adhered these separately, and always just to make sure that they line up, I adhere my middle letter first, and that way I can sort of space it out. I end up still being a little off center with my top word love, but hey, you can't be perfect every time. So I went ahead and adhered that all with liquid glue, and this was just to make sure that I could sort of move it side to side if I needed to, just to be sure that everything was centered. And you'll notice that I'm leaving the middle line of the card blank, so I'm adhering all of my letters to create this love you sentiment on the very top and very bottom, leaving a space in the middle. And this is so that I can use another piece from the ephemera pack, and this is the word scripted die, beautiful. And I want to make sure that I can highlight this in a way where it can't be missed, and that this is almost the actual focal point of the card. That can be a little difficult with glitter paper and floral letters, so I went ahead and took some more flower pieces from the ephemera pack and put them together to make this very long sort of bouquet, and I adhered them together with liquid glue, and then also adhered that to my card front, which is this pattern paper with liquid glue. Now, to make sure that this beautiful scripted letter or scripted word was the forefront and the focus, I made sure to put some very thin foam tape strips on the back of that, and then adhere that right to the top of that floral bouquet. And looking at this on screen now, it looks a little difficult to see that word die cut, but in reality it's not. It's popped up with that foam tape, and it gives just that bit of interest and contrast that you need. Also, it's outlined with white, so it looks like an actual die cut, and it's cut beautifully, so you don't have to struggle to see it. It looks wonderful. I love the way that this one turned out as well, and I actually think this looks great as a set if you wanted to give a little gift to somebody. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope that you've enjoyed the video. As always, all of the links to the products are in the description, as well as the link to the coordinating blog post. Thanks so much. I'll see you again soon. Bye.